Hello everybody and welcome back to 3DAF. My name is Zander and today we're going to talk about the cold end. Now, for those of you just joining us, this is actually the third episode in this series. We also did one about the heating envelope and the hot end. So, please feel free to come on, check that out up above right here before you watch this episode because they all kind of play into each other. Okay? Now, let's go to Zander in the field. Thank you, Other Zander. Stay safe back there. As Other Zander was saying, today we're going to talk about the cold end. But wait, something's not right here. I think, therefore, I am Lego Man. Whoa. Well, that's better. Well, today we are going to talk about the cold end, where all the action happens. Seriously, Zander, I'm going to stop going to you if you keep doing that kind of gimmicky stuff. Absolutely inappropriate. First of all, that's not even the right quote. And second of all, that's not even the right quote. And third of all, inappropriate. Well, that's your opinion anyways, Other Zander. I think I, and the bulk of our audience, thought that was a pretty good gimmick. Anyhow, without further ado, we're now going to talk about the cold end. The cold end is relatively the same whether you have direct drive or a Bowden-based extruder system. The key difference is where it's going to be located. But to get further into the part, we're going to have to zoom in. Alright, now to look at the cold end assembly. So the first thing we have is a idler arm. Now, for any of you who are familiar with FDM 3D printing, you'll remember pressing this little mechanism. A little clearer to see when you got a Bowden. When it's direct drive, it's usually encapsulated behind your heatsink, so you can't actually see it, but you will recall pressing down on this little idler arm. And what that does is open up the gap to allow the filament to pass through. Now, right here, we have an idler bearing. And the whole point of that bearing is to slowly move forward as your extruder motor is pushing your filament forward. Which brings us to the extruder motor. These come in all different shapes and sizes, but all serve the same function. They get electrical signal and move the motor. Watch our video on that if you want to see more. Up here. After it passes through the idler arm, it gets bit into by this gear here, which is going to force it through and out either into the hot end for your direct drive, or for a Bowden system, there'll be a piece of PTFE tubing connected here, which will lead to your hot end. Back to you, Zander. Now it's time for everybody's favorite game show, What the Friction? Now, you're probably wondering what friction has to do with FDM 3D printing, and it's everything. All right, so what happens whether you have direct drive or a Bowden system, although it is definitely quite a bit worse in a Bowden system, is your extruder motor has a limited amount of force that it can put out, which is set up by your E-steps. Now, we've done a video on E-steps already, so if you want to know more about that, go back and watch it. Anyhow, your filament will advance past this point based on the settings in your E-steps. Inside your Bowden tube, or moving towards your hot end, regardless of what kind of system you have, you will use up some of that force moving forward through friction! And when that happens, you will get less extrusion at the nozzle point. So, it is important to make sure that every time you set up a new system, whether you're just recalibrating after an issue, or whether it's a brand new machine out of the box, you need to get your E-steps proper to counteract the friction in your Bowden tube and in your hot end, so that way you get the right amount of filament every time. And that is the answer to What the Friction? Well, that's it for today's episode. Please stay tuned, like, subscribe, click on the notification so you can see our episodes as they come out. Now, moving forward from this point, we're going to do a bit of different kinds of videos where we do projects and we take you along through our wonderful realm of creation. Stay tuned. As some of you long-term viewers of the channel know, I like to throw things regularly as part of my actual act. Well, what you don't get to see is the carnage that ensues from that. I'm going to sue after that terrible injury I received. Like and subscribe. Have a good rest of the weekend.